AI-driven development with Scott Hunter.
The Azure DevOps Podcast is a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Each show brings you hard-hitting interviews with industry experts, innovating better methods, and sharing success stories. Listen on to learn how to increase quality, ship quickly, and operate well. And now your host, Jeffrey Palermo.
Welcome to the show. I'm Jeffrey Palermo, your host for helping you and your teams move fast and deliver quality and to run your software with confidence in Azure, all while using everything that the .NET ecosystem has to offer. My guest today on the show is a returning guest multiple times, but most recently on episode 272, introducing everything .NET 8. But Scott Hunter is back on the show. He's the Vice President of Product for the Azure Developer Experience. And in short, he builds all the .NET tools for Azure, and he's been around at Microsoft for a long time. He's had a hand in so many things over the years, and I'm excited to have him back on the show. So, Scott, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
I am doing well, and we just got done with build, so I'm super excited about all the crud that we just shipped to build and all the crazy announcements we just did.
Absolutely. A very, very busy week. And I'd want to get into that, but for the new listeners who are kind of just young in their career, just finding the podcast and maybe even kind of getting familiar with your work for the first time, I'd like to go back a little bit. And what are just some of the highlights over the recent years that to catch us up to the present day?
First off, I've been at Microsoft for 18 years, and so I've been in this space forever and forever and forever. You know, I joined the ASP.NET team and back when we used to work with you a whole bunch as we were building ASP.NET MVC, Web API, SignalR, and some of those things. But obviously then, you know, in about 2014, we started building, we open sourced all of .NET in 2014. We started taking contributions on the ASP.NET tech. And then around that same time frame, we started the prototypes that would become .NET Core, which was the reboot of .NET that we shipped in 2016, which I'm super proud of. I mean, that's you know, my career highlight at Microsoft is being part of the team that rebooted .NET. Yeah. It's the success that it is today, now being able to run on Windows, Mac, Linux, you know, full command line support, all those types of things, and all the performance work we did there. And then weirdly enough, I did spend a lot of time in Azure when I was doing that .NET reboot, and all that Azure tech came to developer division where I work today. And so now I work on things like App Service, Azure Container Apps, Azure Functions, and a bunch of the other services that we have for developers in the cloud. But, you know, also I think is, you know, when you look at DevDiv all up, we build Visual Studio Code, Copilot for developers, a bunch of these cloud things that I just mentioned, and most of the tools for doing the cloud as well. And so you know, I think you and I both would, you know, you and I talked at dinner one night a year or two ago about AI, and it's amazing to see, you know, I remember a build ago, I was like, you know, we talk about AI too much, and then the AI has changed so much in the last year that now it's hard for me not to talk about it because it's part of my everyday job.
Right. And I want to ask you about that. With so many announcements and all the videos of the demos are available online. We don't need to rehash what those are, and we've seen Copilot, agent mode, and all those things. But I want to talk maybe at the strategy level about AI-driven development, about like all these things. What's changing, and what does every software engineering team need to really look at? Like, what lens do they need to look at with all these announcements, and what is this going to do for them?
The way I think about it is I think it changed the way that we look at how we develop. You know, what I would tell you is I don't look at any of this technology as being a replacement for an engineer. You know, at the end of the day, while there's fun tools, you can go out there and say, I'm going to go vibe code some application. You know, I don't think you would ever want to run that in production. You know, imagine writing a huge application that managed your bank account and then never looking at the code and having any idea if it was actually sending that information to your bank or sending it to some evil entity in the cloud somewhere or something like that. And so I do think for like in my role, it is great to be able to go prototype an idea super, super quickly But to get verification from my team and my bosses, it's the right thing to go do. But we would then sit down and properly build, properly architect an application. So you watch all the videos on YouTube, and that's cool. And by the way, we do it too. In fact, we wrote a really neat tool that we can go look at subreddits in Reddit and easily go get a sentiment of that Reddit over a period of time. So imagine we do a build conference, and then we go to the .NET subreddit, and then we say, hey, what is the last 3 days of that look like? What are the key messages? And that's a vibe coded application that David Fowler and James Montemagno on my team put together. And for that kind of scenario, that's the vibe coding thing is perfect. But if you're doing something on a bigger scale, you would not want me to vibe code a service for Azure.
Yeah, right.
For example, and most of my job is doing. But I think people should think of the AI in many other ways as well. So like one of the things that I do is I'm a big fan of using ChatGPT deep research. And so what I can do is I can say, like, I build Azure Functions, which are our serverless solution for building high performance APIs. And we have competitors in both Amazon and Google and other places. And I can go into ChatGPT and say, give me a market analysis of my service compared to these other services, highlighting the key differentiators between these two services, which ones have better features, give me charts showing the features, and then tell me what news has occurred in the market in the last week around that. And then literally what I do is I run that every week. And then I use the AI to say, tell me what changed between the last 2 weeks. And so before, I would go take somebody on my team and they would have to go manually go scroll through, the websites of the competitors. They'd have to go and read blogs or transcribe podcasts or other things to go and go look at the sentiment and once again in subreddits and stuff like that. And now I can do that in 15 or 20 minutes every Monday. I could never have done that before.
Yeah.
And so, as a developer, it's more than just writing my code in many cases. I mean, you run a business. It's more than just the code. Building the apps and that stuff's important, but all this other stuff about, analyzing the markets and all that kind of stuff is super, super good too. And this tech is just great for it. But let's talk about developers.
Yeah, let's do it.
So funny story. I remember 2007, I get hired by the ASP.NET team. And at that point in time, I'd been a developer for many years, a .NET developer for many years. And I had my list of all these things I wanted to go fix in ASP.NET when I joined the team. And I remember coming into Microsoft and I've got my list, I'm ready to go. And then I look at the whole backlog we have in ASP.NET and I'm like, crud. My stuff's important, but I'm not sure it's more important than the stuff that was in the list. And so you start learning the hard world of development. It's like we had a very small developer team. That's why I think we moved so fast when I was in ASP.NET, is just a handful of developers, no more than 10.
Yeah.
And so we can only do so much work. And so the next thing I know, I'm triaging this, our bug backlog and our features. And most of the things I wanted to go fix never got to that list. But with some of the new stuff that we just announced at Build, I think it's going to enable developers to go do some of that stuff that we couldn't have got to before. And so here's the way I think about it. So we introduced something called the Padawan, or the software engineering agent. And for people that have, if you've used Cursor or if you used Visual Studio Code in agent mode, by the way, we just released agent mode for Visual Studio as well. So now it's in both Visual Studio Code, and crazily enough, it's actually in the JetBrains IDEs. It's in Xcode, it's in Eclipse. And so we have put Copilot agent mode in pretty much every major development tool, is what I would say. But if you never played with agent mode is, when we first started doing Copilot, it was mainly about, hey, how would I implement a bubble sort? You could ask a question like that. It would show you the code. You would say, or as you're typing, you would get much better completions in the editor. But this last 6 to 8 months, we made a huge transition. The models got much better, kind of starting with Anthropic's Claude Sonnet. When that came out, that was the first coding model that really got good. And suddenly you could actually start asking the AI to help you write code versus just asking it questions about code or doing a completion. And so folks, if you're not used any of this tech, one of my favorite ones as a .NET developer, when I show this to some of my customers, I open up a Blazor project and I just go into agent mode and I say, change all the buttons in this application to be orange and round.
Okay.
And then the agent will start looking at the app, and in my case, it's an Inspire application, so it's got multiple projects. It goes, hey, I found the web project. I found the web project using Bootstrap. And then it goes and shows me the CSS it's going to write to go do this. And then it goes and shows me the Razor file changes that's going to make in the Blazor application. And I could not have done this stuff before. I mean, it's just amazing. It's now I get to go work on the parts of the app I like to work on. And I have the agent do the stuff that I don't like to do in many cases. But at Build, we took this to another level. Because now, we should also talk about MCP as well while we're here. So, MCP, if people don't know what MCP is, it is a protocol where you can actually take the LLM and teach it new tricks. And so it's basically, I want to have the LLM be able to file an issue in GitHub, for example. I want to have the LLM be able to look at my database so I can ask questions about the database. And so one of my scenarios is I actually, on my local machine, I've got my editor and I've got an MCP set up on the editor with the GitHub MCP.
Mm-hmm. And we have to say it stands for Model Context Protocol.
Yeah. And by the way, we have great support for that in all of our tools. It's supported in VS Code. It's supported in Visual Studio now as well. The .NET team worked with Anthropic, and because when MCP first came out, there was SDKs, I think, in Java, Python, and JavaScript. Mm-hmm. The .NET team helped write the .NET SDK for MCP, and so if you go build a .NET MCP, you're actually using code that the .NET team gave over to Anthropic to make that awesome.
Nice.
Cool thing now is I can almost live in the agent mode for my entire day. I can sit there and say, hey, I need to file an issue in GitHub to Jeffrey. Please make all the buttons in the application orange and round. Mm-hmm. And so then the MCP, that the LLM will then take that, fire that off to the GitHub MCP. It'll go put the issue in GitHub. And where this gets really cool is now, so you're on your machine and you open up this issue and you're like, you know what, I'm really working on the database logic. I don't really want to go just do slight UI tweaks. And so the new feature that we just shipped at Build is called the Software Engineering Agent, or Padawan is the code name we use internally. Mm-hmm. So in GitHub, you would basically go, you know what, this isn't what I really want to do. I'm just going to assign this issue to Copilot. And so when you do that, you're now using Copilot as your developer. Now, people might freak out and go, that scares the heck out of me. I don't want to just go have the AI start spitting code all throughout my application. But because it's in GitHub, what's going to happen is the agent is going to automatically open up a PR, and it's going to start working.
It's a feature branch.
And the cool thing is, if you want to, you're going to see that PR open up. If you open the PR up in your browser in GitHub, you can literally watch the agent go. It's going to first go and write a plan in the PR, saying what it's going to go do, and then it's going to go start making those code changes. Now, the cool thing about it is, as I said before, I don't want the agent stuff. I don't want the AI just doing random stuff without my approval.
Yeah. And
so when it's done, it's gonna ask you for a code review. And so you're going to go and do the code review and go, yeah, this looks great. I would have done this the exact same way. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you say, I don't like this CSS. I wouldn't have done it this way. You highlight the stuff you don't like. You put the feedback in just like you would for a real developer. And then the agent will go off and work on the feedback you gave it again. And when you're done, you go, yep, now this looks perfect. I'm going to accept the PR, and you're good to go.
So is this a IDE workflow or a GitHub website in the pull request page workflow, or both?
It is what I would say is it is a GitHub workflow in the cloud.
Okay.
So if you and I are using agent mode today, we are literally typing into the chat window inside of the IDE of our choice, telling it, hey, go do this, go do that, go do this. In this mode that I'm describing, you just assign the issue to Copilot, and Copilot in the cloud is then operating on GitHub.
And then to review it, we'd go to the pull request page on github.com and then make a comment for it to do another cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or,
Got it.
or you know, once again, you can also do that inside of the IDE of your choice as well. Obviously, you know,
Yeah.
there's lots of GitHub integration in all of our tools as well, so you could actually stay in the IDE the whole time as well. But it's an amazing flow. And what I would tell people is, you know, I wouldn't go tell it, you know, go build me a calculator app. But I would, you know, imagine the bugs. One of the first scenarios we were looking at it internally at Microsoft was, you know, once again back to my ASP.NET thing. There is issues and bugs in the backlog of .NET, of ASP.NET that are not hard,
Mm-hmm.
but they're also not fun to do.
Right.
And these are the things that I would now assign to an agent. And my job as a developer is more to review the work the agent did. I think this is just going to transform the way that we work. I mean, how much of when you code, how much of that stuff is just grunt
Oh, so
stuff that's
much.
not fun?
Yeah. There's there's always been the figuring out how I want the software shaped. And then once I kind of figure that out, then it's the mechanics of, okay, now let me lay this out. Let me actually get it to be that way.
And to me, that's you know, our jobs as developers. I want to spend more time doing what you just described and less time doing grunt work.
Yeah.
You know, if you're like, hey, go make this change across your entire code base. I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go do the find and replace kind of work. I'll just go and write a detailed issue in GitHub and then ask the agent to go do the work for you. And I know you've been playing with this tech for a while as well. You know, the deeper so it means for the developer, if you want to enable the agent to be successful, you've got to write a good issue.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if the more detail you give it on the issue, the better the results you're going to have. Just like if you had a junior developer, hey, you might go sit in their office and have a conversation about how you would fix it. You know, if you give that same context in the issue, the agent will be just like that coworker that you went and had a discussion on how you would actually attack a bug or something like that.
And just from a management perspective, would you agree or disagree? It seems right that at any time, I would still expect at some point there will be something that, guess what? The automation can't fix it, can't figure it out, and we got to do it ourselves. And therefore, every bit of the code needs to be organized for humans so that we can get in there and all the same standards and readability and organization still apply. Now, we needed to actually do it just like we do it now, right?
Exactly. There will always be issues. You know, once again, I don't know what the percentage completion would be today. I've not measured that I've not done enough of it to know if I feel what things it can do and what things it can't do. But you know, one of the things you described a great point. If I have something go work on my code, I want it to work on my code in the same style that the code is.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's also a mechanism where you can put prompts into your application where you define these things. And so it's kind of funny. Another thing I'll go back and think about is when I first joined Microsoft, we were very spec driven. We wrote detailed specs about how the new feature was going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened is as we got faster and faster, well, we got away from the specs. And we got away from the specs because just keeping the spec up to date was more work than actually writing the actual code.
Yeah.
And I think this AI stuff's going to bring back the spec again. Because once again, the more detailed the description of how the product's supposed to work, how it's designed, what a business object looks like, how business objects interact with the user interface, the more prompt you give this tech, the more it'll do what you just described. You can put a prompt in saying, do this and do it in the same style as you could say the style of a single file or the single application
Mm-hmm.
or whatnot. And it'll do things the same style that you're doing it today and match all the same coding practices and so on that you're used to. Because I remember back when I first did this stuff and we didn't have all the great source control stuff. And I'd go, one of my developers wrote code in a very different style, using different casing and all that kind of stuff. And it drove me nuts.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can tell this tech to do the same thing. And I think in the long run, I think as developers, we're going to write more prompts like I just described, prompt/spec about how we want things to look and how we want things to feel when the AI goes and does work for us.
Well, as an architect, it's one thing to figure out what features you want a piece of software, whether it's highly visual or whether it's just kicking out a report with some really complex calculations. But as an architect, I'm thinking, I need it to be structured in a certain way. I need to have testing standards. And I was coaching a younger engineer just this week, and so I'm rattling off guidance from my head, and I'm like, I haven't said that in a while. But I always want the automated test to test in the small, and then after I have that, test like concentric circles in the large, ending up with full system end-to-end tests. And so with this automation, I know there's different rule sets that you can do in agent mode, but how sophisticated is it about being able to specify how we want the code to be arranged when it does the generation?
You can write a prompt inside of your app. Historically, it was called instructions.md, as detailed as you want. If you want to write 50 pages of stuff in there, like here's how I want test written, here's how I want business logic written, here's how I want UI written. I want this to be in React. I want it to be this. Once again, the better your spec is, the better the results you're going to get out. We've actually internally, we have a service. Externally, we have a service called Azure Spring Apps that's being deprecated, and we were able to write really detailed prompts, and we were able to then run these prompts on the agent mode and actually have it migrate an application from Spring Apps to Azure Container Apps. You can do some crazy stuff with it. We have another tool that we're shipping that we ship at Build is a tool. Another great place that's tech can be used at. This tool is designed as a what's the right term I would use for it? It is a modernization tool.
Okay.
And imagine you decide, hey, I've got an ASP.NET application and it uses RabbitMQ locally. It's a local app, and I'm going to move to the cloud. And as part of moving to the cloud, I want to move from RabbitMQ to Service Bus because these are both messaging things. I could run a RabbitMQ in the cloud, but I'd prefer to use Service Bus primarily because it's a PaaS service, which means I don't have to patch it, I don't have to update it, I don't have to do any of those things.
Right.
And so with this tool that we ship to Build, what you do is you create formulas. And here's how you create a formula. You basically go and take your ASP.NET app and take one or two files and move them from RabbitMQ to Service Bus. And then you take that commit, and our tool will take that commit with that change in it, and it will then convert that commit into prompts. And then that makes the formula. And then I can say, run that formula on my entire code base.
Mm-hmm.
And it'll go and then go make those same types of changes. And we've had customers move an entire application from, some one thing like RabbitMQ to Service Bus, or another scenario was a customer that was moving from Amazon. And so they were moving from Amazon S3 to Azure Storage. Another great way to use these types of tools to do mass changes using, and the AI is really cool because we have an AI that will go, let's say it makes a change and the change breaks the build. There's another agent we have that will go and try to fix the broken build. And so you can sit there and watch it, I broke the build. Let me see if I can fix the build. At some point it might get stuck and you'll have to go fix it for it. But, once again, it's all about taking the toil away. You go and make this change on a couple files, and then we can use the AI to help you make that change across, the other 100 files in your application.
Yeah.
And it goes more than just being a developer as well. There's another agent that we shipped at Build is what we call the site reliability engineer agent. And so this is meant to be after your app is done and you put your app in the cloud, how do you monitor that app? Today at Microsoft, we actually have SRE people. These are engineers that actually job is to go make sure that this stuff is running. And we started trying to think about how do we use AI to help that? We're not trying to get rid of those people, but a lot of the work those people do is grunt work. And I'll give you a couple scenarios that are really cool. One of the big uses we do internally is if something goes down somewhere, a pager's going to go off.
Yeah.
And somebody's going to be woken up and they're going to have to go deal with an issue. And just because of the scope of something like Azure, some of these issues end up being transient issues, which means it was just a glitch, meaning that the network bubbled for 30 seconds or 10 seconds or what, and it caused the app to have a failure. And, imagine 3:00 in the morning, your pager goes off, and you see that at 2:58 a.m., your site was having a problem. You wake up, and by the time you get in front of the console, the app's running fine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So the SRE agent, you can basically point it at like an app service And what'll happen is before you get paged, it'll go, oh, the rules that Jeffrey put in this say, if the app is down, it needs to be down for a certain amount of window before I actually go and page somebody. So now the agent's going to go 2:58 a.m. Oh, the app is down. Let me go watch it for a little bit. Oh, at 3:01, it's fine. And so in that case, it's going to close the issue and nobody ever gets paged. Or it could be that, we've been doing this software thing for a long time. What's the first thing you do? You reboot. And so you could also tell the SRE agent that, if the app still appears to be down,
Restart.
Just restart it and then watch it for a few minutes. And if it's still done after that, then go wake somebody up.
Yeah.
And so we've already seen inside of Microsoft, we've been able to reduce the amount of pager hits by 30 to 40% in some of our teams with this tech.
So you already have this working in Azure.
Yeah, everything that like, whether it's the software engineering agent or the SRE agent, we are using these tools internally for ourselves. It's meant to, once again, if I can reduce the pager hits my team takes.
Yeah.
But I'll give you other scenarios that are really cool too. We've all built apps, and sometimes you're like, I went and looked in the dashboard, and I saw the app was using a lot of memory. Well, the SRE agent can look at those types of things too. It can go look and say, hey, I see you're on an old version of .NET. You're on the January version of .NET 9. You should be on the May version of .NET 9. And then you could actually, in that tool, you could then assign that issue to the software engineering agent to go do that migration from one version to the next version. But the tool can also do cool stuff like, hey, I've noticed that there's a memory spike in the application. Would you like me to go take a memory dump?
Yeah.
And so then I could say, hey, Scott, I've got your memory dump. Would you like me to analyze it for you? Yes, please do. Here's what I found in this. And so once again, these are, I still have to do all the work, but every time I'm going and asking the agent to go do something on my behalf, that's saving me a bunch of time. And so the idea is basically, all these tools are not meant to replace people. They're meant to basically make people more effective where they can do more of the stuff they want to do. As a developer, I'd rather write code than go to some portal, send a command to go get a memory dump, download it, get to my machine. I'd rather just go ask the agent to go do that work for me and even analyze it. Maybe it doesn't, after analyze it doesn't know, and then I have to go open it up anyways. But still,
right.
I got a lot more steps in before I had to go do manual work.
So in my mind, as I'm categorizing this, I know that all the tech is new, and next year there's going to be additional scenarios, and dust will have settled, and we'll have learned a lot. But what I'm thinking about right now is, okay, there's certain sets of scenarios that already are so well known and so rote that it does fall into the category of busy work. And you've outlined a few, and I would submit that another one is just periodically, yes, I need to, let me upgrade .NET to the next incremental version, or let me make sure I'm on the latest version of all the libraries that I'm using. Where if you don't intentionally do that, you look up one day and you're like, well, shoot, how many versions behind am I on this library? Wait, there was a security vulnerability on that one. And that it's just busy work, where this seems ripe for that scenario where, oh, look, there's a pull request. There's a daily or a weekly feature branch that might pop up that, it was just library upgrades. Am I on the right path?
Yes, that's the exact right path. I mean, we have a thing called Dependabot, which will go find if you have out of date libraries. But yeah, there's just so much. We call it developer toil. Mm-hmm. And our job is to go find ways to reduce developer toil so we can all do the things we love to do. That's what I would tell you.
Yeah. Now, from a philosophy standpoint, my brain goes from, wait a minute, are there certain scenarios where there's this automation running off to the side without an owner, and then there's some other these automations where it's Jeffrey's agent, and whatever it does, Jeffrey chooses to submit the work, and it is Jeffrey's work, and Jeffrey is accountable versus some other category? How do you keep it straight?
You're still accountable. I mean, at the end of the day, there's any of the stuff that we are describing today, you are in control of. So at the end of the day, you're the one asking the agent to go get your memory dump. You're the one asking it to go do one of these things, and so you are in control. I am not ready. I don't think our customers are ready. I don't think you're ready for this stuff to go off and do stuff on its own without
No.
you being involved in it. And so the key message I want to land here is you are always in control. Nothing happens without you saying, do something. And so at the end of the day, you are the one. It's like, hey, Jeffrey kept the site up.
Okay,
the SRE just helped Jeffrey keep the site up.
So if it's not the SRE agent is doing something, it is Jeffrey happens to be on call. I have enabled my SRE agent to do some things while I'm responsible for watching it.
Yeah, you're watching it.
Okay. All right. Nice. That makes a lot of sense, because then you always have an accountable party, and any kind of a business equipment always has to have some kind of operator.
Our biggest fear is exactly what you were describing. You have to have an operator. You are the operator. There is no, maybe in 5 years, 10 years, maybe we get to some crazy point where you can do more. And I think in the case of like the SRE agent, we don't have this today, but it is something that I think over this next year, you're going to see us do more of this. Is you have your own practices. I described a couple in our case. What we're doing is we're taking some of the best practices that we do at Microsoft and building them into the agent. I want to get to a place where you can put your own practices in. Maybe you have a different practice on how you want to do things. It's like, I want to enable you to sit there and customize this thing to do the stuff you want it to go do as well, not just the stuff that I hard coded into it.
Yeah. There's going to be a big organizational philosophy shift that I see happening with this, because there's so many teams that rely on, and lots of conversations, that they'll have this issue on their development board, and it's really too big. There's so many things going on. It's at the feature level, and then a developer will put hands on keyboard while still in the brain trying to figure out how the heck this is going to be designed. We haven't even done the design, but my hands are on the keyboard, and a capable developer kind of like figures it out in line. Whereas it seems like in order to leverage this technology, it's going to force us to be more intentional about design and decomposition, and not shortchange that. What do you think about that topic?
Say that again.
The design. If a card is too big, or if an issue is too big, and I just say agent go, I'm thinking, what do I expect to come back? Versus if I decompose it, break it down into its piece parts, determine what the resulting structure should be, and then have issues that are small, like an issue that is, the UI for it. The issue is the data layer. The issue that is for messaging it to some other system. And maybe I don't know the advances that it's made so far.
As I said before, that's kind of where I started with. I don't think it's going to do that kind of stuff yet. The question I would say is, if you wrote a big detailed spec, I would actually challenge you. You should go play with this stuff and try.
That's the key. It has to be detailed. You can't
let
it.
I was with a customer in China just a couple months ago, and we were having these exact same questions. Like, write a super detailed spec of how your app is. Once again, as I said, that's why I started with specs in the ASP.NET days. It's like, if I wrote the great spec, I should be able to go ask it to go do something like that on my behalf, and maybe get a result that I like.
Yeah.
I think of this stuff kind of like Google search. Remember when we first started searching, you search, you don't get the answer you want. You just search, you keep changing the query until you get the thing you want. I think we're going to enter a new phase of this. We're going to build tools into VS Code and Visual Studio that are basically prompt libraries. And what you're going to do when you start designing one of these things is you're going to build a prompt library, which has all the detailed descriptions of how to do this stuff. You might start, I'm way ahead of the game. I would not be surprised. We've written all these huge articles and these books and stuff about how to build software, the best practices in Azure. We probably will convert those into prompt libraries in the long run. You'll take one of those and say, go apply this practice to my application. I'll give you another funny one that we did. The Azure Functions team wrote a great article on how to move an application from AWS Lambda to Azure Functions. And then what they did is you take that article, you upload it as a prompt into the agent mode, and you then tell the agent to go do that for you. And it's actually really good. It's a 90-95% kind of completion of that thing. But if it's not good enough, you just go and keep working on the article until you get the article into a good enough shape that you get that conversion at a higher rate.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to do as developers. We're going to start doing that kind of development where some part of your job is going to be writing physical code, and some part of your job is going to be writing these awesome prompts to make the tech do what you want.
Yeah. Well, I can kind of hear all the listeners. It's probably a very common question from just seeing the demos and the tools at Build, and then the announcements of what we can do. The question is, and it's probably not there now, but is there the start that you're aware of a place where developers can go for some full-on samples of these prompts and the rule sets and everything, where they can say, okay, let me grab this whole set of things and let me have it run on my box and let me observe it kind of, building, and then boom, I have a, whatever such and such application out of it, just to kind of learn the intricacies.
I don't think we have that resource today, but I think the next time I get on this podcast, I bet we do have that resource, because that's, as I said, we're already trying to figure out how to have a prompt library built in the tools. It's just too early. This is just, we just shipped most of this stuff just a few weeks ago.
Right.
And we've been using this stuff internally, I would say since early January, February, for the most part. The SRE stuff came super quick, trying to solve our own problems. As I said before, if I can reduce pagers by 30 or 40%, that makes everybody happy. And we have teams inside of Microsoft whose sole job is to go figure out why things don't work.
Yeah.
I call this my fundamentals team, and they are building some amazing stuff that we've not shipped yet to you, because we're using this to diagnose our own services and our own code. And so I think this space is just going to accelerate at a crazy rate, and it's a great time to be a developer.
It is. And what a great time, because I'm thinking the intersection with Aspire that provides just a growing list of integrations, and whether an integration just needs to be, getting an SDK with a library and a security token, or whether it needs to be a little something running in an Aspire container that's deployed, and then it comes with an MCP, whether you need that or not, or just some web APIs. But then if that's aware of it and we generate and use it, and now I'm thinking all the same lingo with Power Apps of here's some logic, and then here's the integrations. All those integrations are now just available to .NET apps. And yeah, it's certainly an exciting time to be a developer.
It's a crazy space. I was saying before, there's MCPs that can talk to databases. And so then you can go and say, go write me a business object for this table.
Yeah.
And so the MCP will go out and pull the definition of the table into the LLM. And so now it can see the name of the table and the name of the columns and what's the primary key and stuff like that. And so that's why the MCP stuff is so important, is because the LLM doesn't know anything about your database, because you're sitting in GitHub or you're sitting on your local machine with your code open. It only sees the code. But with MCPs, I can say, and if you're paranoid, you can do a read-only MCP that can only read the table definitions. It can't actually change anything for you. And so now the LLM can see your database and can see the makeup of the database. You can do the same thing for some of the services. And so I think what's cool here is with MCP, we're going to basically be able to teach the LLM or give the LLM access to that extra information, which makes the results that we get from it so much better.
Nice. Well, as we close up, we'll certainly put every relevant link in the show notes, all the demos, all the online recordings from Build and everything, so that you listeners can go and check this out. But Scott, thank you so much for coming on the show. As we close up, is there any closing call to actions that you'd like to leave us with?
I just want you to try this stuff and give us feedback. That's the most important thing for me, is to, please go try the engineering agent and give us feedback on, how useful it is, what the success rate you're seeing with it is. And please go try the site reliability engineer agent out as well. And, tell us what other scenarios you want it to go look at. We've hard coded a bunch of the best practices from Microsoft into it. But, as I said before, I know I want to make it open to people to do your practices and other people's practices. But we'd also love to know what we missed.
Nice.
It's so early.
Yeah. And the best email or a URL to provide that feedback?
You can always send, I'm just scott.hunter@microsoft.com.
Nice. All right. Direct channel. Love it. All right. Well, thanks, Scott. And we'll close it up. And I really appreciate you coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. My pleasure. And until next time, keep shipping.
You've been listening to the Azure DevOps Podcast, a show for developers and DevOps professionals shipping software using Microsoft technologies. Go to www.azuredevops.show for show notes and other episodes. On behalf of your host, Jeffrey Palermo, and our sponsors, thanks for listening, and may God bless you.